Why does the crisis at the Co-op matter? It matters for one really important reason. It illustrates what happens at a corporate level when systems of accountability and decision making fail. And in the case of the Co-op Bank, they do appear to have failed spectacularly. What else can we learn from the crisis at the Co-op Bank? And we should assume that the crisis at the Co-op is not just peculiar to the Co-op Bank itself, because it illustrates a broader and more systemic failure of corporate governance and leadership. In the business school, with undergraduates and postgraduate students, we're interested in trying to better understand and reflect upon how decisions are made in large, complex organisations. And those organisations can be in the public sector, the private sector, or the not-for-profit sector. And whilst on the one hand, the Co-op group appears to represent a very complex set of organisations, to understand the Co-op group, we have to understand and recognise that the Co-op group is made up of a series of autonomous, independent organisations. There appears to be, and indeed there isn't really, a coherent and strategic centre. In the case of the Co-op Bank, however, governance failure was systemic. Why does that matter? Of course it matters for individual customers and particularly staff who work in the Co-op Bank who are likely to lose their jobs. But it matters for another more significant reason. It matters because it illustrates what can happen when corporate decision making fails in a really significant and profound way. One of the problems of the Co-op group wasn't just that it made the wrong investments, and it wasn't just that they made decisions to purchase other banks at the request of the UK central government, but it is that they failed to take account of and include their member organisations and their board in some of these decision making. So in the Co-op group, we can see what happens when an organisation fails to meet up to its own internal and external points of reference. Indeed, we can see that although the Co-op group has a very clear and explicit set of guidelines in terms of its ethical approach to policy making and practice, over the last 2 to 3 years, it failed to live up to that. That matters not just because it will be of a disappointment to people who had invested in the bank, but it also tells us what can happen at a corporate level when organisations fail to follow their own internal and external guidelines and recommendations for good practice. And it's those issues, the failure to follow guidelines and practice, which we in the school are looking at and continue to look at with organisations that work across all sectors, not just the public and not-for-profit sector, but the private sector as well.